Okay. We've talked about, what I learned from my mother, what revelations and what I learned in revelations from my father. Now I want to talk about revelations God taught me and how he showed me that was my prophetic gift. And so we're going to have to go back a little bit. I mean, we've already talked about my early past with my mom and my dad. I want to touch on my sister just a little bit. My sister was 3.5 years older than me, and she taught me how to function in day-to-day stuff, like getting dressed, walking, talking, all the stuff that an older sister would teach her little brother. And she ended up being the one in school. The teachers would always say, why can't you be more like Mary Jane? And so she was the perfect one of the family, and she got most of my parents' attention. And so I thought, to get attention other ways. I had 13 cousins. We didn't pay much attention to my dad's side of the family because there was trouble there. But my mom's side, it was, a really loving sense of family. I mean, Grandpa kissed everybody. I mean, he couldn't help himself. He was a hugger kisser, kind of drove Dad a little crazy. He was a master mason. My uncle's a master mason. But my family had a huge impact on my life also. But I mean, as I went into my teenage years, I mean, we got a foreign exchange student from Norway, and my sister went to college. And my dad thought it'd be good for me. I didn't have a lot of friends, and I was socially awkward. And so he came into the house, and um, I brought him to my church, and he says, it'd be great, we had a couple beers. So I went over to the 7-Eleven and I talked someone into buying a 6-pack of beer, and we drank 3 beers in the parking lot before a Friday night. Let's come to church instead of going out partying type of party. And pastor knew. He pulled me aside. He says, Bill, I'm not going to tell your parents, but you can't be doing this. And of course, 2 days later, he told my parents. So that kind of ended our relationship with the church, and things kind of spiraled from there. But God hadn't forgot what he told me when I was a kid, when he first awakened me spiritually and gave me a sense, not just a sense, an understanding of destiny in a real way. So um, I didn't, totally turn away, but I was learning the stuff of the world in order to get attention and friends that probably weren't very good friends for me. And I think of a lot of us during high school back in those times did, because it was we had open campus, we had smoking areas. I mean, so we could leave anytime we wanted. We had cars, we had jobs. So, I mean, it was a different time and a different place, but it really messed my life up. I ended up having an alcohol problem at a young age. I found ways to get my hands on alcohol. The drinking age was 18 in Michigan. So, like I said, I could go to a 7-Eleven and somebody would buy me a pack of beer. And that became a real problem for me. It got to the point where I ended up having to drop out of school, and I finally hit bottom. And I went and I talked to my uncle John. He was high school principal, and he gave me a talk about setting goals. About you got to set realistic goals, and you got to be able to do the work to make them happen. And it was a very good foundational thing. I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I define, revelation is, there's two types really. You have epiphanies, which we all have from time to time, and you also have observations, things that you observe in your world. And I mean, they're interesting concepts. They don't become a revelation until you start to receive confirmation, spiritual in some way. And God talks to us through other people mostly, and he talks to us through his word, the Bible, and he talks to us hundreds of other places. He really wants to create dialogue with us in a lot of ways. And so I didn't realize that. Um, but I've always had the ability, God given ability of precognition. I would dream about things, and then a week or two later, they would happen. That's continued through my life. At least not a week or more goes by where I don't have one of those deja vu moments and realize I dreamed about this a while back. It's kind of strange, but it became normal for me because, when you have a spiritual gift and you don't understand it, it's just part of walking or talking and anything else you do. You just tend to keep those things to yourself because, people don't really want to hear your observations in high school. And so
Have you ever kept a dream journal?
I've written down my testimony, but no, God's storing all that stuff. I got
Okay.
memories of the ones that are important, and I've documented those over the years.
Okay.
But no, I'm not going to overthink what God's doing in my life. But after Uncle John, I mean, I learned a lot, but I've always been a dreamer. I've always had some type of a dream going on about something I'd like to do, and I had the ability to visualize. So I was sitting there paying no attention to nothing in the world and seeing myself in my own mind's eye doing this and doing that. Like the cartoon we had back as a kid, this kid in school and he's a fighter pilot and the kids laugh at him. Next thing you know, he's in war, and next thing you know, and that was kind of me as a kid. But I also had this thing with dreams, um, like I said, would come true. And so I had this really weird dream one night. I found myself in a studio, a music studio, and I was a little kid. And so I woke up with the dream and I felt, wow, that's weird. That was a weird dream. I wonder if that's one of those future dreams. How could that happen? I don't know, but it sounds really cool. So I think I'll fantasize on this one for a while. And so, I went through the process. If I'm going to be back there, well, then I'd know all the rock and roll songs and I know the history of the world. So I'd want to make some changes to make the world a better place and put myself in good so I, could get money and do what I wanted to do. So I figured, the first thing I'd want to do is come back at a time where you could really change history. So I thought, well, why not 1963? Well, that year follows me throughout my life, for many, many reasons. But as soon as I came up with that concept, I saw that number like 5, 10 times that day. And so if I'm going to be a rock and roll star, I need a dream, a name. So I said, oh, it's from a dream. I'll be the dream weaver. And my friend comes up to me, you're nothing but a dream weaver. And I'm like, whoa. So
Right.
as I built this fantasy, every step of the way, I got 1, 2, 3, 10 confirmations. And I'm like freaking out because I've had college level psychology and I understand this particular psychosis.
Right. Yeah. Confirmation bias.
Yeah,
Right.
because you believe what you want to believe and not the actual facts. And
So
and,
how do you
and
differentiate between what you?
well, I'm going to get to that. I'm certain.
Well, I'm
Well,
trying to insert myself to be
right,
relevant and useful.
right. But I probably need to keep with the storyline in my head right now, simply
All right.
because
Sure.
I don't want to get too far off track. And then we can get into some of these great questions. So I'm sure better ones will pop into your head by the time we get there.
Okay. I'll
Um,
keep notes.
so I continued this besides, my life being unstable and everything else going on. And I finally decided, I was going to quit the alcohol and the other things I was doing and, quit eating from the tree of the poisonous fruit and, get right with God and start to try to work back. And, so I signed up for my senior year full credits and I signed up for a government class. And he was teaching us about Plato and Socrates and Machiavelli and John Locke and Thomas Jefferson and laissez-faire and, which is, free enterprise system and, all these other different systems. And I'm on my way to school. I had an early class. I had that class first and it hit me. Like I had this epiphany and I'm like, wow, I see it. See what this guy's trying to teach me. So we go into class and I come up to the guy. I had this revelation, I was excited and I'm like, I'd like to share this with the class. I know what you're trying to teach me. He says, sure. So I went up there and I said, I see 2 types of people. I see those that can take care of themselves and those that can't. And I see 2 systems of government. Those that are ones made for the people that can take care of themselves and the others made for the ones that can't. And both systems work for a specific group, but you have to deal in a world where you have both people and both systems, both are right, and neither one fit the situation.
That's very wise, I think.
And but I could see it in my mind, and the confirmation went when the teacher didn't say, "Oh, I don't know," but that's the point he was trying to make. That was confirmation by me saying, "Oh, I had this epiphany," and of course I'm thinking, "Oh man, what a smart little boy I am thinking that up," big mistake. And so I didn't know that yet, though. And so, I mean, I ended up slipping back down for a while, and I ended up, basically losing everything, my job, my car, my life. Okay, I'm Bill Murray now. I'm going to go in the Navy and straighten out all my problems, and that'll take care of it. And it did for a while. But when I got the Navy, I was sober, and I started noticing things. I started noticing the mind games that the drill sergeants were playing, the dehumanization by cutting people's hairs and putting them all in the same uniform and making them all walk, talk, drink, everything the same way. And so I understood they were tearing us down to build us back up. And I saw the process, and I saw how they selected different people to make different points. Like they selected one guy just to throw him out. They said no candy at the PX, and of course he grabbed a piece of candy, didn't pay for it. The company commander didn't know that, but just the fact he had the candy, you're going home right now, son. I told you not to do that. You did it. So they pick out scapegoats, and so I was trying to be in the middle somewhere so they'd leave me alone. But I learned life lessons like crazy, and there I go with the eye again. I thought it was me giving me these observations and these understandings, but it started getting more often and more intense, and there were also confirmations to these understandings along the way, because I'd get this revelation of something, and then I'd look around and there it would be happening in front of me, and I'd be like, whoa. And then I started seeing different types of people over and over again. I saw most of my friends from home and other people in personality. I started tripping out, man. What's going on here? And I understood that not only did I see myself in them, I could see them in me, and I was starting to get this understanding even before I got outside of boot camp. And after boot camp, we went to San Diego with A school, and I had the same group of friends, and we were all kind of, going through this process the same way. I kept receiving these really cool concepts, and I kept sharing with my friends, and they thought that was really cool. And I thought, oh boy, what a smart little boy I am. And, like anything else, there had to be confirmation along the way. I remember we went and we saw this movie, Oh God, with John Denver. That movie just blew my mind. Just absolutely blew my mind. Because most of the stuff that was in the commentary, I already knew. I was getting this information about just looking at the world around me and looking for confirmation. And so we got on board the Kitty Hawk, our ship, and I was still with my one friend. And we went out one night, and I was getting concept after concept, and I was telling it to him. I turned to him and says, Art, I'm on a roll tonight. I'm going to mess with your head. And we both went down on our knees. And at the same time, we both heard in our head, someone's going to mess with both of you at the same time. So not only was the revelations coming into my head, they were coming into his at the same time. And the frequency got faster and faster and faster until my life passed before my eyes in a split second. And so God was taking different concepts and adding them together that I'd learned throughout my life and adding new ones. And he built it up in a pyramid, and then which feeds into what was at the bottom, and then connect that with other similar concepts building up over the whole crescendo. I mean, you had to be there. That's the only way I can describe it. You had to be there. And I had instant confirmation right next to me of everything we were both receiving at the same time. God was making a point that he was the one that's been giving me these concepts. It wasn't me. And before the night was over, I reached the point where I knew who I was, why, where I come from, where I'm going. I knew God's master plan for this eternity. And I was at peace with all that, because when you get to that level, it's very, very simple. I can put it to you in a sentence, but you won't understand it because you don't have the pyramids of information at that time. So we went back to the ship, and man, it was crazy. I'd lost my keys during the night, and we came in the berthing area. And I saw one of my shipmates with a hammer pounding on my lock. I'm like, what's he pounding on my lock? And my friend says, remember you lost your keys? I said, yeah, he knows. He says, everybody knows. So this was a shared spiritual experience, not only between me and the man next to me, but actually millions around the world at the same time, including, I'd say, probably about a quarter of that ship. I kept running into him for weeks. But the point of the entire lesson was I'm different in spirit than most people. My spirit is made up of everyone that ever lived. And I am in everybody, and I represent all of mankind. That's where Son of Man comes in. But I'm not the same as Jesus. He's just the body of Christ. I'm all of mankind. So what does that make me? Incredibly average. I got the good, the bad, the worst. I'm a cross section. I'm a character that everybody could believe in. And I asked God, is anyone ever going to see that night? He says, yes. I said, in the book of Revelation, he says, yes. I'm like, great, I'm going to find out something new. And he says, where I told the prophet to put down his pen. I'm like, I thought I was
his pen?
God, the part where God told the prophet to put down his pen is where he put my revelation. And my whole life, I've been telling people that my life story is written in the blood of all the martyrs and sits before the Father. So it was interesting when I heard about the little book that goes down sweet as honey, but sours in your stomach too. Revelations chapter 10. So the game plan is at some point before the end, everybody is going to see that night, and then they will be held responsible for all the information they get, because the more information you have, Jesus talked about that with Tyre.
Do you mean they'll get this experience in their lifetime, and they'll have to be confronted with the choice?
At some point, all of mankind will have a vision of that night and be given a choice.
Okay.
That's God's purpose for what he did. And of course, he put me under covenant because I knew too much. So he put me under authority that someday I had to do something for him. Of course, plant a seed of hope. We've talked about that. So, but the main thing was about me. And, everybody knew this in my little circle. And of course, the walls came up at some point. We could talk about, I want to get more into the rest of the revelation right now. There was another part of it, which is my vision I call the transfiguration of the body of Christ. I was shown that in this real-time moment that Jesus lives through us, and that we're going to pick up and be in him, not only for his ministry in the past, but also the millennial kingdom. And then in the fullness of time for the Gentiles, he's also going to have a different kingdom for the Gentiles. And I explained to the rabbi, I took their eschatology and I built on that, because they believe that they're resurrected from the children that were in the wilderness to the time of the captivity, to the time of the second temple, and that their kingdom, they'll have 3 reincarnations plus be in this kingdom. That's their eschatology, that their end time is that kingdom with all those different life experiences with them. And so I took that and added it on and says, well, when you're done with that, you can come to this kingdom over here too. You're welcome. It's welcome for everybody, but those that aren't teachable will struggle. But I learned that God is the God of reconciliation and not damnation in hell. And because, how do you judge somebody that I caused to go to hell before I knew Christ? I'm sure I've affected people's lives that caused them to fall. So should I go be with God in heaven and somebody I caused to fall can't? It's not just. Plus, some people, you can't help the family you're born in. They're just born with. So our job as the body of Christ is basically, because everything I'm saying applies to every member of the body of Christ, to reverse the works of the devil. And through this past, present, future thing, there's nothing Satan can do. And it's done through parallel universes. You can't travel back in time, but you can recreate the universe in a doesn't take 6 days. He's already done it. So that was the vision that I received at that time. And I've shared it over the years with different people, but I have confirmations. Like I said, I had confirmation all the way through it. And I've had confirmation for the last 45 years, 48 years, whatever it is, 47, since 1978.
Do you look for things to do the opposite of confirming it? I mean, what would that look like if something was to debunk it or discredit it or whatever?
It'd create a paradox. You understand, God says something and it doesn't happen. He'll fix it later. So if I make a big mistake, we'll do it all over again, just like in Groundhog Day.
Okay.
And that's what happens to those that don't learn too. They repeat lives over and over.
I've got 5 questions so far. Do you want me to do that now?
Sure. Yep.
First one is differentiating spiritual confirmation from confirmation bias. You touched on that because you have an education in psychological or that kind of thing.
Okay.
How do you differentiate that?
Yeah, that's easy. Have you ever heard? I mean, I'm really a Gideon in Bible. I'm not a King David. I'm not a mighty man of valor. I'm the least in my family. The way Gideon discerned what's going on, if he really had to know, he put a fleece on the ground and then prayed to God that if he wants him to go left, have it be wet the next day, or go right, have it not be left. Those work, but you got to put them in terms of what you're doing. For example, I was going to become a truck driver. I needed to switch careers. So I prayed to God. I said, God, if you want me to be a truck driver, let me pass my CDL test on the first try. And I passed with 80 right on the got off the line. So when he does make the answer known, there's usually a twist.
Yeah, my driver's test I failed because for some reason I couldn't shift it into like 5th gear or whatever.
I had a cone backing. I had to go back to school for half a week and do it again.
But the written test I passed first. Okay. I had a question on foretelling. If you're too vocal about something, you ever feel like that jinxes it, or you can affect it negatively if you're too open about something like that?
Do you know the story of Joseph?
Yeah.
He turns what was meant for evil into good through the process of divine providence. That's my life.
Dreams. Yeah.
And I'm a type of Christ just as he is. And as members of the body of Christ, we all should be. We're commanded to put on Christ every day.
Yeah, and that's an interesting example, because the king is like, I want you to tell me what my dream was, and I'll know. Maybe I think he forgot what it was. And Joseph said, all right, I need to go to sleep and think on this for 24 hours and see if God gives me the dream. And he did. That was interesting. My next thing is seeing in others, or seeing yourself in others. A friend of mine calls this a mirror, seeing yourself in other people. And he said that I was a good mirror, whatever that meant.
I'll tell you what it means. It's an ability to discern others. I love to do this too. I do it all the time. We can not only understand each other just by getting to know each other close in spirit, but our thoughts can affect other people because we're all connected. So if you're lusting over some girl over here, that's going to cause problems for her.
How? Could you give me an example of that? That's
because of the electromagnetic fields are connected, and so your thoughts on what you're doing I've seen it. I've got confirmation of it. I'm also pretty good at pre-life experiences. I had a chef once. Okay, he's Italian, a big guy. They just brought him in, and he was arrogant. He's like a mafia don, and he thought he was going to pick on me. And I asked God, I said, "Who is this guy?" He says, "You know, the guy that beat Jesus to death, so I had to raise him again so he could be crucified." I said, "Yeah, that's the guy."
Wait, what? Where's this story? You're talking about Jesus?
I'm talking about a chef I worked for
Okay.
who
Okay.
I saw who he was in his pre-life. And
Oh.
God showed me that he was the guy that beat Jesus to death
Oh, in a previous life.
in a previous life. I saw that in him. And so I looked for confirmation. So we talked about it.
Oh, wow.
He was dark, you know. He's like, Bill, I can't change. I am what I am. And I know I'm not against you, but it is what it is. So don't try to change me. But you know, we talked about it. It was pretty heavy, pretty deep. So
And
I
you,
mean, we're talking about the connection. There's another way. I'd be with a boss and I'd throw their personality back at them, and they get mad at me and yell at me. I say, I learned it from you.
yeah.
You know, I have the ability to throw your personality back at you, and I can discern because how you treat me is how you think of mankind. So I got one up on you just by watching how you respond to me.
Mm. So revelations, do you think, does everybody have access to that, or is it just specific people?
I can't speak for anyone but myself. I do believe we can all have epiphanies and insights. Your level, the more you give God credit for epiphanies, insights, your own thinking, the more he will give you. This is a fundamental concept that covers everybody. When you get all arrogant and cocky, you lose blessing. When you become humble and give credit to, I mean, God taught me everything I know, plus he gave me life. How can I take credit for anything?
Well, how do you
Uh,
differentiate that from, I know this is true, I know this is going to happen or whatever, from personal arrogance? Because some people separate that. Well, this is something God told me
I
and it
mean,
has nothing to do with me. You
I
know,
got a great answer for that. It's right here in my disclaimer, and I think I'll read it at this time because it's
okay.
a good place to talk it. What you are about to hear is my testimony. It is not offered as fantasy, fiction, or personal ambition. I do not claim this role on my own will, nor will I seek honor from men. I bring it forward only because I am convinced of the timing. For more than 40 years, these words have been sealed within me. They are given by revelation, confirmed through the Spirit, and carried in silence until now, the dispensation of the fullness of time. This is not only my story, but is the story of mankind. I offer it not as dogma, but as witness that those who have ears to hear may discern the truth. This is not my story. It's the story of mankind. I write as a witness to eternal kingdoms, one revealed to the Jews in 30 AD, and one now to the body of Christ. I am also the second witness called in the fullness of time. When Jesus spoke of the Son of Man in the third person, he spoke of me, and so are you if you are in the body of Christ. Jesus is in me present, I am in him in past, and together we are one in the future. These words are not born out of imagination, but of revelation, given, confirmed, and sealed within me for decades until the appropriate time. I do not bring them for glory, but only time has come. I can't do this till now. I finally got all the tools in place where I can actually talk to somebody about what I experienced and what I've been through and let them see that God has a purpose and a plan for everybody's life.
Does that center around that experience that everybody's going to have where they're going to have to make a decision?
For some people,
Yeah.
there's millions of people awakening right now around the world that I mean, I can't walk out the door without getting three kinds of eyes. I get knowing looks. Through my entire life, I've had people that knew who I was before I did and who knew who I was as I walked through the room. I can sense that spiritually. I also see people that are critical. They want to tear down. And I see a whole bunch of people's eyes. I see nothing. They're just going through their life and they're evil or have an understanding of God and godly things. and they're just kind of moping through life, and that's kind of sad.
Well, which category am I in?
I mean, you have a knowing of some areas, but you're somebody that can't be taught.
Okay.
And
Well, thank you for your honesty.
I found that intriguing because, I think, like I said, if God's showing you epiphanies and he's showing you insights and you give him credit, you're already, have the whole connection with the body of Christ thing going on. I see that in you. So it's just a prophetic gift that I think everyone has, and they need to develop it. You need to exercise that. And you do that by acting once you're sure it's right, and then giving God glory for the outcome.
Yeah, I'm open to hearing, but there's more than one way to interpret things, and I try to be honest with myself because I'd love to think that I have a special gift, especially in the premonitions that I've had. And the last premonition I had, I clearly misinterpreted whatever that was, and I own that. You know, some of these premonitions come with knowing what it is, and others, like the last one, was just a feeling, and I went for a walk and tried to figure out what is this, and seemed to come to me, but it was clearly not true.
Well, if you have a question, ask God and put it in context. Have it rain tomorrow at noon. It's a really big one. I've seen it rain tomorrow at noon, Guy. It
Oh,
works.
oh,
I mean,
okay.
if it's a little
So
thing,
it's a
it's a
fleece.
50%, 50-50, God, flip a coin.
Yeah.
That it's kind of that concept, but it's got to be relevant to what you're thinking. Like I said, with my truck driving example, if you have a premonition, you need to seek a way to confirm it. And it's relevant to try to do something. For example, God's not the author of confusion. You can just try to do whatever it is. And if it doesn't work, lose it.
Yeah. And I've had like 5 or 6 of these. They just come randomly, and some can be explained by physical things and my subconscious picking up on things. Others, I have to write them down and kind of look at them more closely to see if there's anything that can't be explained. I had one more question about the thing that you see will happen with people, and that is making a decision on what I think I would describe as a mystery. They would have this thing happen to them, and then they have to make a decision based on something that they might think is mysterious, and they don't know what to make of it. What would you say to them?
They're going to know what to make of it, Scott.
Oh, okay. It'll be a gnosis.
I just described a download like in the Matrix that populates your brain instantly. You're going to notice.
Okay.
And you're going to know it's outside of yourself because it's going to be a supernatural, spiritual experience. In order to enlighten them, either to turn to the left or the right before the end. That doesn't mean that God will reconcile a soul at any point. You just need to
see this as a one-time event that is probably going to happen during a lifetime?
The problem is mankind keeps destroying himself over and over again, and we're right at the brink.
Yeah, we definitely are.
Like I said, I wouldn't do this unless I was absolutely positive beyond any shadow, any doubt, because I understand the spiritual, that for somebody that's saying what I'm saying and not being able to back it up with God, it's unthinkable. You know this too, or you should, that if you are operating outside of a whole lot of trouble to be in God's will, and you're trying to bring a message God didn't say,